Hi YouTube, Darth here. Today I'm going to talk all about the changes to the Conquest team scoring system in Battlefield. I'm not going to cover the individual soldier scoring mechanics, but rather the overall score and how that affects Conquest in Battlefield 1. By now, many of you have played the BF1 beta, so you'll have a background for what I'm talking about. If not, I'll walk you through the changes anyways. I'll talk about three things today. First, a history of Conquest, next the changes in Battlefield 1, and finally how that affects the pace and feel of the game. Since Battlefield 1942, one of the pillars of the franchise has been the Conquest game mode. It's operated pretty much the same since Battlefield 1942 was released in 2002. Battlefield 1942 was an innovator. Maps were enormous, much larger than most arena shooters and multiplayer shooters that were popular at the time. To provide objectives for the team, each map was dotted with flags that each team had to capture. Battlefield 1 is the same in this respect, but capturing individual flags is where the similarities end. In previous Battlefield titles, each team started the round with a set number of tickets. The object of the game was to reduce the enemy team's tickets to zero. This could be done by either capturing and holding the majority of flags, or by killing enough enemy soldiers, causing them to respawn and spend a ticket. Usually games ended because of a combination of both, but flags were vastly more important. In earlier Battlefield titles, it was also possible to capture all the flags on a map, and if you eliminated all the enemy soldiers, the game would end immediately. Essentially a sudden death. Over time, the nature of Conquest has changed only a little, and after being mostly absent in Battlefield 3, Battlefield 4 removed the concept of sudden death entirely by always providing the teams with spawn locations even if they had no flags left. But for the most part, its gameplay mechanics stayed intact over the last 14 years. Cue Battlefield 1, where nothing is sacred. The biggest two differences, mechanically, are as follows. In Battlefield 1, there are no more tickets. Scoring is done incrementally, and points tally upwards as players hold individual flags. The second biggest change is that the penalty for dying and respawning, thus consuming a ticket and affecting your team's overall score, has been removed entirely. At face value, hearing about this caused me some major consternation during the announcement for Battlefield 1. Conquest had always been a major pillar of the franchise, and DICE was changing it after a decade of keeping it relatively untouched. But I wanted to reserve final judgment until I could play with the new game mode myself and learn more about its inner workings. It's actually very simple once you get to know it. In Battlefield 1, each flag contributes equally to the team's score. Scoring happens regardless of if a team has a majority of flags or not. Each flag increases the rate of scoring from 1 point per 10 seconds all the way down to 1 every second. This is a major difference from the rest of the franchise, where the concept of ticket bleed, or losing tickets over time due to flag captures, required holding a majority of flags. The team without the majority simply had to score on kills alone. But what does this change mean? Let's look at a breakdown of scoring rates in Battlefield 1 and Battlefield 4 on a 7-flag map. In Battlefield 1, holding one flag will yield a team 1 point every 10 seconds. As more flags are captured, this rate speeds up by 1.5 seconds for each flag held. From what I could tell from the alpha, smaller maps with fewer flags seem to be proportionally similar. This rate maxes out at 1 point per second with all flags captured in Battlefield 1. All cap games end very, very quickly. By comparison, Battlefield 4 will not start an automatic score for your team until more points are captured than the enemy team. In the case of a 7-flag map requiring a majority, this would be 4 flags. The ticket burn is pretty intense at roughly 32 tickets per minute. This increases as more flags are captured, ending up at about 55 tickets per minute. I'd like to go a step deeper right now and talk about the score generation rates for both games. If we think about a relatively even game being a 4-3 flag spread, this produces two wildly different situations. In Battlefield 1, over 10 minutes, this will translate into a point spread of just about 24 points. This produces a match score of 109 to 85, and it looks comparatively close. Keyword is looks. Keep in mind that was 10 minutes of Battlefield 1's equivalent of a burn. In Battlefield 4, assuming nobody died and respawned, this same situation would produce a point spread of about 800 to 480. In this case, it would seem one team has almost entirely run away with the game. More than likely, the totals would be different, as it's very possible for both teams to have no ticket bleed at all with a capture tie. Whereas in Battlefield 1, as long as they have a single flag, teams are always scoring points regardless of the overall flag situation. In this example, both Battlefield 1 and Battlefield 4 are in roughly the same state at the 10-minute mark. This is true despite the score deflation and upwards counting in Battlefield 1. Reversing the example match's capture situation to 3-4 would obviously reverse the match in both games given an equal amount of time. The big difference in the two games comes if the first part of the match is more lopsided in one team's favor. In Battlefield 1, if the flag spread was 5-2, after 10 minutes the score would look like 150 to 70. In Battlefield 4, a 10-minute 5-2 spread is not much different than a 4-3 spread, producing a score of 800 to 400, a difference of only 80 tickets. In this situation in Battlefield 1, it's extremely difficult to come back without repeating the other team's feat. Let's assume we try to mount a comeback against a team that went 5-2 for the first 10 minutes in Battlefield 1. Starting at 150 to 70, let's say our team takes 4 flags. With a solid capture for twice as long, you could come back and win by 2 points, 298 to 300. More than likely, this will happen so cleanly, and probably won't happen at all in this situation. In Battlefield 4, in order to level the game, you would merely need to capture 4 flags for just slightly over the same amount of time that the enemy held 5. Coming back is far easier on much less effort. And that's the major drawback to Battlefield 1's system, is that at a point in your match it becomes mathematically infeasible for the losing team to win even if they take majority control of the map. I've seen this scoring system before in other games, and this is not unlike Arathi Basin in World of Warcraft, which has an extremely similar cap and point system. In that game you could get mods that would tell you how far off a team's victory was. These mods would calculate based on flags captured, the overall point generation rate, and would tell you how many flags you needed in order to come back. Eventually, games would get to the point in Arathi Basin where comebacks became impossible, and the mod would simply display a countdown to the end. Battlefield 1 is exactly the same. Before I go any further, I'd like to wrap up talking about data with these two graphs. This shows the overall point generation per flag per minute in Battlefield 1 and BF4. In both games, you're mostly going to see matches stick to the middle 3 rates, as games are likely to be close to even flag distributions. One thing to note is that point generation massively spikes with more of the map captured in Battlefield 1, while Battlefield 4 keeps the rate of increase more linear. Also keep in mind that Battlefield 1's points are massively deflated from Battlefield 4's tickets. This is to give BF1 matches the appearance of actually being close, even when they're not. So what conclusions can you draw from this? Let's discuss. So is either system definitively better than the other? It depends on what you want to prioritize. Battlefield 1 makes games look closer even if they are not, but coming back from a losing position is much more difficult in BF1 than BF4. On the other hand, at least it looks less discouraging. Each flag in Battlefield 1 contributes equally to the team. That sounds good, but this has the drawback of making strategic flags much less meaningful than in classic Conquest. For example, a flag that is far out of the way can mean changing the state of scoring in Battlefield 4, but in Battlefield 1 it may just be pointless to capture that flag when so many others are closer. In Battlefield 1, the team score is much more representative of the course of the entire game rather than just the end. However, this also means that comebacks are difficult, and the natural tension at the end of a Conquest round is often lost to mathematical certainty. Also in BF1, kills and deaths are irrelevant to scoring. This has the bonus of focusing teams on playstyles that play the objectives. However, this does somewhat punish players who are good at the fundamentals of the game like shooting or vehicle play. Particularly, this renders aircraft meaningless as they cannot contribute to capturing points, save for objective Edward on Sinai. Additionally, positioning will not matter in quote competitive end quote play, as players will simply redeploy to get to where they need to be. Subjectively, Battlefield 1's point scoring system is easier to understand for newcomers, at least with respect to what they should be prioritizing in the game. There's also no weird don't spawn meta behavior at the end of rounds. And finally, there's the Behemoth Armored Train, or game-changing Uber vehicle that gives teams a better chance at coming back in Battlefield 1. Sometimes it succeeds in changing the pivot of a game, but it's going to be very situational on each map. It'll only ever appear in games that are lopsided by 50 points or more, so its chances of reversing the situation are pretty low, particularly when the train can only control 1 or 2 points. Plus, you take a huge chunk of the team that could otherwise be capturing points and put them all in one spot. Overall, it seems like more of a gimmick to extend matches to seem closer than to reverse them. But how do I feel about all these changes? Honestly, it feels like DICE changed Battlefield 1's Conquest scoring system merely for the sake of changing it. The gains really don't outweigh the detrimental effect on endgame play, and especially the break with franchise tradition. Now it feels like every other game's objective scoring system. I can appreciate that it makes games seem closer, and it might be possible to tweak the new system to benefit comebacks a bit more, but I have the philosophy of if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I don't think Conquest was what was broken about Battlefield. It wasn't perfect, but it certainly was something that worked well. Overall, the new system is okay, but for me it just doesn't feel like franchise Battlefield. Will I be okay if Battlefield 1 ships with the new system and never changes? Yes, I'll still be playing this game, but I feel we will have lost something unique to the series. That's it for this video about Conquest. Let me know what you think of the new Conquest system in Battlefield 1 in the comments below. If you're new around here, I'll be doing more Battlefield 1 related videos in the near future, so be sure to like and subscribe. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time, YouTube.